Okay, good evening, everyone. My autoethnography is about the community of the former military community. Uh, my first experience, with the former military community came in 1993, in December '93. I was on what the military called a Great Lakes cruise. And what that is, the Navy and the Marine Corps travel together. And so for this particular cruise, the Navy took one of their smallest ships, what they call an amphibious ship. That's one of the ships that can get close to the beach to where Marines can launch on land, with amphibious vehicles. Well, anyway, the ship was called a USS Boulder, and we left from Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, and we came through the St. Lawrence Seaway, and we visited places, like such as Oswego, New York, Buffalo, New York, Cleveland, Detroit, Chicago, Milwaukee, just traveling, through the Great Lakes. And the purpose of this cruise was to boost recruiting. So, the Marines would do, different training ops to show, what Marines do because there's really no bases in that area. But once you got through with the training, you had to visit, go out in town with your uniform on. And with it being '93, we was kind of fresh from the first desert storm from '91. So the American patriotism, was still high. And so we got in our uniforms and we were running to people from all branches of service. And they welcomed us and they would buy lunches and, dinners and just talk to us like they knew us their whole life. And that was, so cool to me, that these strangers that we met, were no longer strangers after 2 or 3 minutes. So then we fast forward 9 years later, in 2002, I was stationed in Southside Chicago as a Marine Corps recruiter. And being there, I didn't have any, family in Chicago or no friends at the time. So as time, was going on, as being on recruiting, you meet different people. And one cool thing I, liked about Chicago was that you could be in a neighborhood, just houses everywhere, and all of a sudden you see a bar on the corner. So some days when I would get off work, I'm still in uniform, and I would, go in some of these bars, having a couple of drinks before I went home, and you would meet people in there, and it was almost like the Cheers atmosphere from the TV show. And you share boot camp stories with different people, and they, came in. Some of them were, drafted in, but the pride that they had in the military and the camaraderie they had for you, even though you just met, because we all went through, similar experiences together, and it kind of takes away the gap of the years, and and I just loved it. I just loved that part of it, and it kind of instilled that pride in the military that I didn't know how strong it was, being a young Marine. And we'll fast forward to 2009, right around the time I met my wife in Pensacola, Florida. I was stationed down there. And one day I was at her grandmother's house, and a family friend came over. His nickname was Po Dog. He's an older guy. And my wife's mother said, "Hey, Po Dog, meet Anthony. He a Marine." And he was like, "Really?" And me and Po Dog sat in the yard and talked and drank like there was no one else, at the house. And and every time, we would go back to Pensacola, my mother-in-law would say, "Po Dog asked about you." And I was like, "Well, how he doing?" But, Po Dog, he recently passed away earlier this year. So I was, kind of sad that, he had passed, but I was grateful, for that one opportunity that we spent together. And it was awesome. It really was. Now I'm retired. I live in Birmingham, back in Birmingham. And one of my wife's friends, she lived, down the street. And they had a cookout one day. And so we go down there, and I'm like probably one of the only men that's there. So I still try to mingle and talk to everybody else. And then this guy named Alfonso come up. He an older guy. And so we sitting down drinking. And he just asked me about myself. And I told him I just retired from the Marine Corps. He was like, really? I was in during Vietnam. And it just kicked off from there. You know, we've been to some of the same bases, even though he was at Camp Lejeune. I think he said like 69 or 70, and I was there in 92 and 93. And some of the things were still the same. And we just talked and laughed and talked about different things in different places. And so that's just one of the things of how great it is, you know, when you meet different people from all walks of life and you all share that common experience. And it's not just people that you know actually talk to, but I got the Marine Corps emblem on the back of my truck, and other Marines will pass by and blow the horn or wave, and it just you always know that you know you got a friend somewhere. And I think and I love that community because you just feel even though you're away from the service, you do kind of feel out of place sometimes. But when you meet somebody who shared some of the same things you have, it kind of makes you feel whole again. So I love my military community. Thanks.